Welcome to Common Man Cocktails. I'm your host, Derrick Schommer. Today we're going to show you how to create clear ice cubes with a Tovolo Perfect Cube tray. Now these trays come in sets of 2, so you can create one as an experimentation and one as your typical ice cube tray. You could buy a couple of them. Of course, they're all available at awesomedrinks.com in different varieties and colors. The trick to creating clear ice with a Tovolo tray is to first destroy your tray. Yes, you're going to put holes in the bottom. Now, why are you going to put holes in the bottom of your awesome new tray you just picked up? And it is always going to be risky, but I'm going to show you how it works. And then you can decide if you want to put holes in the bottom of your tray. So, to make clear ice, as we said in our first video, you can watch it, it'll be at the end of this video if you'd like to see how to create large cubes. The trick is to freeze in a single direction. Typically, the easiest for most home users is top down. Very similar to how ice on a lake freezes. It freezes from the top down. If it freezes from the bottom up, your fish are going to pop out of the water and die. So the top down approach is to use this tiny little ice cube cooler, or really probably a beer cooler, probably fits a 6-pack or so. You could check this in the link below if you want to, or you could search on Amazon for this tiny little guy. It's a flip lid Coleman. The model is, I don't know, it's a 4.7, it's a 5-quart, 4.7 liters. Below you can find the affiliate link if you like Derrick and you want to click on it to help support him. You can do that. I'm Derrick. So you're going to use this little guy. You're going to create what I want to call an ice hammock. So this is called cheesecloth. If you've created any infusions or you have something similar to this, you can use this. Cheesecloth is usually used for filtering things, like kind of like a less fine-grained coffee filter. You're gonna hammock this inside the water, and the reason is if you let this sink to the bottom, it's gonna actually create the opposite of what you want. It's gonna create a half a pool of water that's all dirty, full of white from the oxygen and everything else. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna take this, you're gonna add 2 chip clips. You can find these at your grocery store or take them off the chips you have at home like I did, and you're gonna put your ice hammock and you're going to rest it in here. So what I did is I clip one chip bag clip to one side, and then I let it sit into this water. Now my water is really warm. The reason is I like to use hot water for the infusion because what you'll notice is the hot water helps to stir up and get some of those chemicals out quicker. Chemicals being the natural elements usually found in water, especially tap water. You could use distilled water if you want to. It's not going to make or break you. People have said, oh, if you use distilled water, this whole process is useless. That's not true at all. That is fallacy. The problem is that when ice freezes, it creates stress. It also has air bubbles, part of that stress. And if you let it freeze in one direction, you remove a lot of that stress. If you let it freeze in every direction, the typical answer is to freeze the outside and then the inside gets frozen at the end. And what happens is that water expands when it's frozen. So if you freeze a shell on the outside and then it slowly freezes on the inside, that core ball, when it freezes, is going to expand out, causing stress marks and white marks and additional air bubbles. And you're going to get this big white explosion, looks like a supernova in the middle, which destroys the clear color. So by freezing it down and not letting it freeze completely, you don't have that stress occur. And thus, distilled water, boiled water, whatever, you're still going to have some level of stress if it fully freezes. This just assists at getting out some of those extra bubbles. So what you're going to do is you're going to take, what I used was a box knife, and cut little squares. You could try a drill, but this is a silicone. And when you drill into it, what ends up, and I tried this, you put a drill in, you drill it through, and you don't see a hole because it just closes itself up. It's still there, but the water has a harder time getting through. I wanted to get through easier, so I just created square cuts. The way that I've seen it done, like Camper English, when he ran this technique in his little science experiment, he used, I think, a painter's brush, took the handle off, and would bang it in to create circles. You could do that as well because it's got like a metal around it, and you could just pop it in. I found it easier because I have a store that sells stuff like ice cube trays to just cut smaller boxes into the bottom of my trays. It may create a little bit of a box shape on your clear ice cube trays, but that melts away pretty quick. All right, once you have that and you've got your hammock going, you're going to rest this in your hammock and then push down on it until you get it to the level where it fills up with enough water. The further down you put it, the more water it fills, and the larger the cube you're going to get. In this case, I've got a fairly large cube, and I still got some heat going on there. And I like to fill it, but I usually leave a little bit of space because the ice is going to expand, it might push up. I found it typically doesn't do that because it doesn't expand enough if you don't let it freeze all the way through. And once you have that, you could throw the other side of your hammock on. I'm going to lift this up a little bit so it stays even. And this gives us the ability to create a more even creation. As you want, you can lower it a little bit less and try and get it nice, evenly dispersed. You want some of the cube to be above the water, but most of the cubes are full with complete water. And because this is as such, the water freezes down. All those elements that are in the water, those impurities and the oxygen and everything else that could be trapped in the cube is going to be pushed through the little holes down further as it starts to freeze down. And then you halt the process, probably about 22 hours. For me, it was even a little bit longer. I went a little long on a couple of my tests, but it still works fine. And you're going to end up with a pocket of ice in the bottom that you could chip away, drain, and then chop out the ice tray itself. It is more of a process than creating the blocks, because the blocks, you just take it out, chop it, and you cut it up into pieces. It really comes down to your preference. The perfect cubes look really perfect. They look nice and clear and square. So presentation means a lot to people. This is a way to create a presentation. It's just a little bit more effort because you're not going to get as much. You can get 2 of these, double it up, and do double at a time, and you'll be fine. Within a week, you're going to have tons of ice. Especially if you're doing it for personal reasons, you just like it that way, and you're not going to feed an entire family with ice. So there you go. Now you have your little ice hammock. You've got your clips on. You're going to take this, you're going to put it in your freezer, and as you place it down, just make sure that the hammock is still where you want it to be, and then let it freeze. And then you'll see what happens. We'll move on to that in fast time right now. All right, so we've let our Tovolo cubes freeze, and now it's time to figure out how to unlock the cubes from the ice and create these perfect cubes. I think this process is a little bit more intense than typically done with just ice cube blocks, because you're getting the blocks. But if you're looking to create perfect little cubes, this is a technique that might work for you. So we're going to take out, and I've let this thaw for probably 7 to 10 minutes, which is just enough to loosen it a little bit. Take off our little bag clips, we're not going to need those. And then from here, you'll see this is frozen inside. In theory, you could reuse this again if you let it thaw out. But like every technique, what we're going to do is flip it upside down and let the gravity suck it down. I don't know, because you can't see inside the Tovolo tray, how much ice is actually in here versus water, if there's any water in the base, or if it's almost completely frozen down. So it'll be interesting to see how far it went. Normally, if you create this without the Tovolo tray, you can look down and kind of see bubbles moving, so you know about how deep the ice is. There we go. So it looks like we have a little pocket in here of ice. You can chip it away. There you go. And then I'm going to see if I can drain some of it out. You don't necessarily have to, because we're going to be cutting into the tray, but it's always fun. And if you can create a couple holes, it'll help with the oxygen. See? Preferably above where the water is, so it drains faster and the oxygen can push the water out. Now, you don't have to necessarily, you could do this in a sink. You don't have to do it on a bar top, but you get the idea. Cut this, and we'll hit it. From there, make a mess. Icebergs, straight ahead. See if we can break this side open a little bit. I'm gonna try and do it without ripping into the cloth too much. That just helps pull away some of the excess, so you're only working with the brick that has your ice cube tray in it. Then you just chop around the ice cube tray. The other thing you can do is you could just be patient or wait. Oh, there you go. Because it's silicone, you don't have to necessarily worry about pulling on it too much, because it still is able to to bend and mold. And a lot of the times with the ice, all you have to do to get it out is to unseat one corner of it, and then it'll pop out. From here, you pretty much can put this in the freezer if you want to, but if you want to use it right now, just pop each one out. They might have a little nipple on the top. You can water it down, put your finger on it, leave it there. If you want to try chopping it out, be my guest. You can make a smaller hole in the bottom too, but good luck with that. And then from there, you've got yourself some perfect Tovolo ice cubes. And at the benefit to this versus the standard ice brick is really just on presentation. If you're looking to have those sharp edges and you don't want to chop forever, this might be an easier technique. It really comes down to patience. The amount of time it takes you to get your trays out of the ice brick is going to be proportional to how much time you wait. If you just give it a little while, it's going to pop out really easy. If you're in a rush, you're actually probably going to work 2 times harder to get it out of here rather than just letting it settle. I could have probably let this settle for another 10 minutes before I could have just popped one of these out. And then you've got yourself the trays, the tray results. Personally, there are a couple scores in here, like a little bit of stress from the ice because it's still going to be pushing up against the tray. But I challenge you to be able to pull out something like this without using the top-down chill technique, because you're going to end up trapping some of that oxygen. But because you've got that hole there, it pushes it all out and you're good to go. All done with a simple hammock technique. And if you can reuse this, you can let it dry, reuse it again, or just get yourself, I mean, normally it comes in a huge roll, and if you're creating bitters or any type of infusion, you probably have plenty of that hanging around. That, my friends, is the Tovolo Ice Cube Perfect Tray with clear cubes. Take these, put them in a Ziploc, throw them in your freezer, repeat the process, build a huge hoard, invite your friends over, and amaze them. That's it. We're teaching you how to make clear ice in a Tovolo Perfect Cube. It's just like ice sculpturing, but more fun because you get to break stuff. Worst case, if it doesn't come out right or you break one oddly, then just